Welcome to Missing the Mark, where we look for meaning in strange places. I'm Christopher. Welcome. Today I'm talking with Max Kolbe of the Escaping Atheism Project, and we're going to be talking about personal, at least the beginning topic will be personal interactions with atheists, specifically the angry sort one meets in comment sections on Twitter and so on. People who, make you think that maybe they're typing with snake fangs at the end of their fingers.
In your YouTube comments, they're all over Facebook now, too.
Yeah, I don't hang out on Facebook much, but I am very, very, very willing to believe that one.
Yep.
So, welcome, Max.
Hey, nice to meet everybody here. I'm sure a lot of your subscribers already know me. Some may not, and that's fine. We're the Escaping Atheism Project. Just to pimp us a little, you can find us Escaping Atheism. You find us on Twitter. There's actually a group of 7 of us officially that are doing the Escaping Atheism Project. And we're not doing Christian apologetics on Escaping Atheism, even though most of us are Christian, we aren't all. So
you have a neo-pagan, right?
Yes, we do. Pretty serious one. I haven't had the conversation with him yet on why the neo-paganism, but he's very serious about it, so that's fine. And we have a lot of friends who are philosophical theists who are not Christian. And Christians are, of course, very welcome. The only thing I would warn, we swear and we're mean to people. So if that sort of behavior disturbs you, don't come. But if you're not afraid of that, then, we engage in the kind of rough and tumble of what we would call the vulgar culture. And we engage the vulgar culture using language it understands. That's not necessarily everybody's style, though, and everybody doesn't need to adopt that because it can get negative, and that's not for everybody.
Yeah, no, it's something I've noticed, and we'll probably talk about else at some other time about how different people genuinely understand things in different ways, and especially how there are people who don't really understand other things besides very rough approaches. But then there also seems to be but we want to talk more about the sort of atheist who is very rough and tumble, but it also doesn't seem to be all that sincere, or if they're sincere, the only thing they're sincere about is their deep-seated generalized anger.
Well, here's what's going on. I think we very badly need more Christians, and I'll even say other religions too, but this is a Christian channel. Christians need to get out there in the public arena. There's even, especially for Catholics, you've probably heard the phrase evangelize the culture before and wondered what it meant. And Bishop Barron, Richard Robert Barron, and others have admitted to some confusion on their own, but the consensus view of those who thought it through is the way you evangelize the culture is you be visibly Christian while being in the culture. That and be seen as a force, mostly for good, but and it doesn't mean you would never do. I don't think you should ever do what so many of the evangelicals do, which is, have you accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and personal Savior? Have you thought about going to hell and how to avoid it? All that blackmail stuff that really off-putting to people,
and for good reason.
Yeah, it is for good reason, actually. I mean,
for those who don't know, Max and I go back quite a long time. For those who don't know, you yourself were actually put off by that very thing for quite some time.
Yeah, I am an ex-atheist, and I had a long journey home. But I did start in Protestant / evangelical land, and one of the things that drove me out of Christianity and out of religion was what I would call the hardcore believer burn people that just want you to accept the proposition that you just must believe this or you're going to burn. It's like accept an intellectual proposition and don't doubt it or you're going to be punished forever. Yeah, I mean, I ran screaming away from that, and I never went back. I'm Catholic now. But and why were we talking about that?
Precisely because that sort of bullying approach doesn't work, and that's what it fundamentally is bullying. It's related actually to why I don't debate people. because
Yeah.
debating people is attempting to get them to change their position. And since people, it's something I mentioned in a video I just made, posted last night actually. But since people believe the things they believe for large masses of evidence gained through living moment to moment, and taking all those moments in and considering them not in a formal sense, but but in informal sense, not irrationally because it's not formal, but simply not not in the sense of like thinking about each one with your internal monologue, but all the moments of life taken together lead people to different conclusions, whereas arguments are brief summaries. And so if you're trying to shift somebody's position that has been they've arrived at over the course of hundreds of thousands of moments, the mass of hundreds of thousands of moments put together by a few words, it doesn't work, first off. And if you're going to come close to working, you're either going to be taking advantage of somebody in a really bad position, um,
Hmm.
the person is really, really hurting for whatever reason, or you're going to be bullying them into it. Um, those are generally the only two ways it works, and so that's related to me to why
Yeah,
debate is kind
picking
of
a debate.
pointless.
Yeah, picking a debate or picking a fight. Well, picking a debate is kind of like picking a fight. I mean, you might say debate isn't fighting. Yeah, it is. It's a structured argument. It's a structured quarrel, is all it is. And so it immediately puts one side into the feeling that they have to defend themselves and they don't want to be seen as stupid and all those things. It
Well,
was
and
said.
the other thing,
Oh,
oh sorry, just the other thing about debate is that it doesn't allow you to you do something where you say like, well, this is the way I see it, or I am willing to trust God on something or something, and the other person says I'm not. In a debate, you can't leave that there. You can't disagree in a debate. In a debate, you have to take all disagreement and
and
attempt to
there's
force the
even
other person.
in fact there's even shame then, like automatically, like even if you say intellectually there shouldn't be, automatically shame accrues if you wind up conceding, oh well, you've got a point,
Mm.
you're right, unless it's a clever ruse, and you say, oh, you've got a point. But no, I mean, like in a debate you would actually feel like you're losing face and have failed somehow if you said, you know what, I haven't thought that through,
Yeah,
let me go think on that and get back to you or whatever. You can't do that in a debate. You just look weak and the whole thing gets messed up because you're not having a conversation. And
exactly. And that's where this brings it really back to that, the believe or burn. Those are all attempts to win. That's an attempt to get somebody to change their position right now, because that's the only way you get people to change positions right now, unless you're in very, very rare moments in people's
the
lives.
vast majority of Christians have never accepted that as such a simple formulation for getting closer to God. Sorry, it just. But anyway, that's another conversation. I think the bigger point is to realize that, and this is kind of important. There's two bits of information. I want a lot of Catholics, especially, to hear this. Especially dealing with atheists on the internet, but increasingly what I'm finding is too, even in real life interactions, atheists tend to feel entitled to be insulting, condescending, and demand that you explain yourself and to start a debate with you at the drop of a hat. Now it's worse online.
Mm.
But you'll find this is culturally happening even in everyday life in some parts of the country, not in others, but it's happening in some parts of the country. And so I think that one of the more important things every Christian should realize is, starting out, you have nothing to prove to the atheist at all, and you have no so-called burden of proof of any kind for simply existing as a believing Christian. You owe no
Mm.
explanations. You owe no rationalizations. You owe no justifications. Owe no apologies. None of it. And actually, it would never be rude to simply say that to an atheist. Even if it sounds rude, even if your voice shakes, the first part would usually be, I don't have anything to prove to you whatsoever. And by the way, you're being kind of rude.
Yeah, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that kind of attitude as a starting place.
No, well, and especially, it's funny because it's always hilarious when non-believers throw around Bible verses, but like it's funny. I actually went through this exchange with somebody recently in my comment section where someone was quoting the Epistle of Saint Peter, where he said, "Be prepared to give an explanation for why there's hope in your heart." And so he says, "Okay, so why is there hope in your heart?" He said, "Well, because God sent Jesus Christ to save us from our sins and brought him back from the dead. That's why."
Prove your extraordinary claim.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what happened. Exactly. um, to which I responded, I'm not making a claim. You asked me a question, I gave you an answer.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the correct response, actually, because you aren't required to prove that extraordinary claim at the drop of a hat. You didn't even really make a claim.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing.
Well, I mean, your claim is as to your reason for feeling a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even there, I'm not asking him to believe me.
And more to the, and you know what, and I can give you why that some will even accuse you, and this would be an atheist doing it probably. Oh, you're dodging the issue. You can't defend your position, and it's like, wait a minute, I don't have to defend my position. That's number one. I gave you an answer as to what I believe, and think of it this way too. Let's just say you're interested in science and I don't know, you're watching TV and it's about astronauts in space, and they note that there's like a time lag of 30 seconds or something when they talk and when you actually hear it. And so you've seen that, right? Astronauts in space, and there's actually long gaps because it takes a few seconds for the round trip. On the moon, it was particularly bad. I don't remember how long it takes light to travel, but it would be like somebody saying, why is there a delay while they're talking to those astronauts? And you say, well, that's because the speed of light is so fast, and that's how fast the signal can go. And him saying, prove your extraordinary claim. Like, what do you mean? Do I have to do experiments on light to demonstrate to you what the speed of light is? Do I have to, demonstrate maybe we'll get walkie-talkies and we'll see how it goes if I get further and further away from you? What? I just gave you what I know to be the correct answer. I don't have to prove anything to you. Go look it up.
Yeah. Well, an even more practical example would be, a man stops you in the street and says, hey, do you know where, such and such a burger joint is? And you say, yeah, you go up on the street, you turn left, and then, 2 blocks down, you make a right, and it's right there. And then he says, prove it. Typical response would be, go ahead and get lost then.
Yeah, really.
I wasn't asking you to believe me. You asked me a question. I gave you an answer. If you prefer to get lost, by all means, don't believe me.
And actually get lost isn't a bad response in a lot of circumstances. As opposed to literal get lost because you didn't follow my map, but really, don't just get lost. Because here's the thing, and I really want to get this out early too. We've had a few interviews about this on Escaping Atheism. There's a large segment of the Christian and non-Christian public who thinks of atheists and so-called skeptics as bullies and always entitled to answers. And they somehow think that because even though Christians are, obligated to, stand witness to the gospel, no, the church has never taught that everybody has to be a Bible scholar and a philosopher and hip to all the science and all the technology and all the history and the incomplete Bible and a complete explanation of any random Bible passage anybody happens to throw at you at any given moment. You're all going to hell if you aren't able to accomplish all that, and accomplish it this week, by the way. What?
Yeah.
No. One of the reasons the church has different people for different jobs is so you can say things like, I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe go ask him.
Oh, yeah. No,
that's an acceptable answer.
It's an incredibly acceptable answer. I don't know the answer to this, but if you want to know the answer, I can tell you the name of a man who does know.
Or we could go together and look it up in this thing or whatever it is.
Yeah, there are any number of possibilities, but yeah, by all means, there's no requirement for everyone to be a specialist in everything. It being somewhat, impossible. The relatedly too, and something I found very funny, is that people will love to throw around the epistle from St. Peter, where he says, always be prepared to give an explanation for the hope that you have in your heart, which is more a call to be willing to be martyred, incidentally. But in any event, the having said that, they really don't like it if you then, and both of us are Catholic. We don't like. I know you actually especially just like throwing around just one or two sentences from the Bible because
I hate flinging Bible verses at people so bad. Oh, just don't do that. Ooh, ooh. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but what's funny? This one happens to be very short, though, because there isn't much context to it. But people really don't like it when you quote Jesus saying, "Do not cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them underfoot and turn and rend you, and do not give to dogs what is holy." People don't like it quoting that one.
Yeah, because what is being said about the unbeliever? What is being said about the atheist? I hear pigs and swine there.
Yes.
And well, I mean, read it back.
I was quoting that one from memory.
All right. Well done.
Don't cast your
pearls before swine, unless they turn and trample you.
Yeah, well, lest they trample them underfoot, then turn and rend you.
And rend you, right? Which means attack you. They'll beat the crap out of you. And by the way, pigs are dangerous. They're real dangerous.
Big, powerful animals.
And that will bite and then kill you and eat you.
With sharp, pointy teeth, too.
Yeah. And so even though, right there's a notice for you that people who are not of the faith can turn extremely hostile. And they've been known to kill Christians. I don't think we're in huge danger of that here at the moment too often, but I don't know. I've talked to at least 2 guys who've been attacked for being Catholic, 2 young guys. Attacked. Okay, so and hate crimes against Catholics are a thing now, people, and they're growing.
We're talking America because obviously they are
in the United States. The world. Yes, the people who are listening to this in America, and I know for a fact in Canada. In fact, I've heard some terrible stories out of Canada. That's why I don't support the Honey Badger Brigade anymore. The complete silence about what's going on up in Canada. Catholics are losing jobs. Catholic politicians are afraid to announce that they go to church, even mention that they go to church lest they lose their jobs. It's a thing. And so, that warning is right there. People will get hostile with you, and you aren't required to be a holy warrior at every moment. Or you're really not.
I think a clear way of phrasing it is that even being a holy warrior doesn't require any particular mode of action.
No, in fact,
in every moment.
Apparently, this is apocryphal, but almost everybody agrees that the sentiment is true within the church. Preach always the gospel. Use words when necessary.
Yeah, St. Francis never said that specifically, but yeah, it's a common sentiment.
It's about correct. It seems largely correct to me.
Yeah, there's that asterisk. Words are often necessary, but yes.
There is a real problem, though, and this goes back years. It's not new. It's been going on. You can see the interviews I've done. See the interview I've done with Brett Keane on the Escaping Atheism channel. See the interview I've done with Stephanie J. Thomason. See the upcoming interview I have with a historian named Border Painter, which will be this week. At least part of it will be released this week. With some major broadsides against atheists, the new atheists, by the way. And even something I just released today on Patreon, why skeptics are losing the general public. It's widely acknowledged now in internet culture that atheists and so-called skeptics, who, by the way, most so-called skeptics are ideological atheists, run in packs in order to psychologically break down, mock, and even terrorize Christians. Other religions too, but they especially like to do it to Christians. They especially have a hate boner for Catholics. Sorry for the impolitic phrasing. They definitely have a special hate for Catholics, and they have been known to drive any number of people offline just by playing psychological teardown tactics on them. I think in the old days, Christians would have said, well, just stay off the internet, that's crap anyway. But no, the internet is the global communications medium now. We can't not be here. And if we're not willing to, if we're not aware that things like this are happening and fighting it, we are in trouble. So being aware. And by the way, some atheists will tell you, we're not even a movement. Don't be paranoid. They're a movement, and they're vicious, and they run in packs. So you can either be afraid or you can gird your loins for battle and be aware that this is happening and take the necessary precautions and attitude. And I know Christopher's ready to say something because I'm sermonizing, but be ready to stand up on the balls of your feet. And because if these people want to, I mean, because you can't turn your back unless you're going to abandon this territory to them.
Yeah, well,
And
one thing
I
I've
think we need
noticed.
to fight for this territory. We have every right to be here, and we owe atheists no apologies for our existence here or for challenging their worldview. And more of us need to have this attitude. So,
yeah. Well, one thing I've noticed a lot of is what you might loosely call a tea time attitude. You know, and there are contexts in which, for example, the adage "don't feed the trolls" is very appropriate. You know, so somebody, you know, the sort of person who just really wants to get an emotional rise out of somebody, who just really wants to fight in that sort of sense. That the best thing you can do, you know, if you are in a gardening club, is just sort of wait them out. They will lose interest if you pay no attention to them, and eventually you can get back to gardening.
yeah, not a good idea here.
Yeah, that doesn't have universal applicability. We're not all in one, you know, great unending tea time where it's important to never talk about any subjects on which people disagree. I mean, you know, that doesn't mean, of course, that one should bring things up that are not germane to the circumstances. So, you know, I'm not saying that a Christian in his gardening club should not talk about gardening, but should talk about something else, but rather that in a lot of circumstances, there is something of that instinct, you know, to be nice and be polite. And as long as we're, you know, inoffensive, everything will kind of work itself out, which often happens in tea times. I mean, I've never attended a high tea myself, but I kind of presume that sort of thing does eventually work itself out because people keep having the things. But those sort of rules are, you know, germane to one particular part of the world. Now, you know, so when you're talking about, for example, the you know, and it's really easy to see the difference too of the worst kind of the atheist who shows up. You know, very often it's blatantly obvious they never read the video they're commenting on, or the, you know, an article in question, or, you know, whatever it is.
In fact, it's so obvious, sometimes they will grossly mischaracterize the contents of the video. And that's actually intentional behavior, by the way. Some of them are trained to do that. It's to discourage others from bothering to watch your video.
Yeah, although I've always wondered, you know, like some of these things, you know, which have no, you know, no direct, straightforward, rational explanation. Like, you know, when somebody shows up and gives a massively inaccurate summary of a video, is there anybody who, when watching a YouTube video, you know, actually decides to click on the video, goes and watches it, pauses it, and scrolls down? Let me see what some really angry sounding person in the comments says before I actually decide to watch this video or not. Is there anyone who actually watches YouTube videos like that?
Yeah, see, that sort of behavior is more common on book reviews, and which, by the way, I want to inform people, they troll book reviews on Amazon and leave phony book reviews. They do that too. If it's Christian books, especially anything that addresses atheism, they do it.
Yeah.
They do it, and they've done it to a lot of people. And it's organized pack activity. Once again, it's organized pack activity. I can talk to you, demonstrate that for anybody who doesn't believe it. And so, but my point is, again, that this is a call to realize, oh, there are these people who are trying to hurt us and hurt our fellow Christians and cause us to not be read, cause us to not be listened to, cause us to feel shamed, cause us to feel humiliated, cause us to feel like every Catholic has to answer for sex abuse, which, by the way, they shouldn't. Anything to break you down or get you to quit whatever you're doing.
Yeah, although some of them are so over the top, I've been tempted to make a video thanking them for making atheism look so bad.
Well, it's not a bad idea, actually.
I mean, because there's some that show up, and I mean, it varies from video to video. You know, a lot of my videos have good comment. You know, a like decent standard of discourse in them. And by decent, I don't mean like polite. I just mean like, you know, rationally related to ideas and you know, demonstrating some ability to think as a minimum, you know, and often better. But you know, then there's the type which is just, you know, at the bottom of a barrel, well underneath that barrel, where they, you know, are just so dumb. You know, they're just sort of like little incandescent balls of anger.
They are.
They're saying nothing of any substance whatever. They're just sort of conveying, using language that they really, really are angry at something.
Yes.
It can't be the video they obviously didn't just watch.
And
So they're really angry at the title of the video they didn't just watch.
what's important, I think, too, I mean, clearly I'm wanting Christians and Catholics especially to hear this. It's important to realize they are a ball of anger. A whole lot of them are a ball of anger. Some of them are being paid to do what they do. Some are getting school credit for what they do. Some are just psychotic and a ball of anger. And the thing is when you know all that's happening, and it is, you can be calmer in the face of it, but you should also be exercising appropriate caution. If you go look on Brett Keen's channel, he's called godtvradio.com. And by the way, he's a coarse, vulgar guy just like me. But if you go look, he got his latest death threat, far from his first, and this one just had him particularly creeped out because it was an atheist who took shots of himself walking down the streets saying, "I'm in your town, Brett Keen, looking at for you, and I'm going to kill you."
Wow.
And it's far from his first death threat. And he, he had the appropriate response, I believe, which is that, every time I think I want to quit, somebody does something like this, and I realize I can't possibly quit. And that's the right attitude, by the way, Christians, to be honest, because every one of us that gets silenced is allowing the 50 other people who were silenced that you didn't hear about. And I can tell you, I've talked to a few of those silenced people, frightened off the internet, which there you need to conduct strategies about that. It is highly unlikely any of these internet tough guys are going to do any of the stuff they do. Furthermore, the more targets they have, the less likely they are to be able to do anything. They have actually been bullying Christians off of YouTube and off of other social media as a planned, coordinated effort of multiple different groups, starting with something called the Cult of Dusty, which you can look up, Cult of Dusty. It's an actual organized effort to make the atheist an internet zone. And it's had several iterations, and it's been going on since the 90s. And none of this is conspiracy theory. You can go Google these things and find out they're all real. You can name the names in some cases.
By the way, a related thing. Well, it's fairly related. Because one thing I think that may well be a technique of what you're describing, as well as other things, because a lot of things can be done for multiple reasons. They can be done where the person doesn't even entirely know the reasons they're doing something, because I think there's a lot of imitation that goes on as well. Where one atheist sees another doing something, and then whether they're trying to win glory through imitation or whatever, they'll be doing it. So for any given person, it's hard to know what on earth their motivation is for some of these really strange actions they do. But another interesting one I've seen is the attempt to wear people down through if somebody says, like, I'm not interested in debating, they'll get a lot of people who really, really try to get them to debate. I've seen that one firsthand. But I've seen that firsthand a lot, not just recently. And one of the things I've seen about that is that you'll get the emotionally manipulative techniques. Like I'm really interested in knowing, if there is a God, I'd really like to know it. So can you explain to me how I can know? So yes. I'm sure you've seen this one too. And so something that's always struck me as just utterly bizarre about these things, and what essentially forms, I think, a very straightforward way of distinguishing the sincere from the insincere people, is if somebody is sincere about this, they will tell you what they know. They will tell you what they have read. Because it's not like we live in a world in which
they've heard and what they've heard. You got to be careful about that. But yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if a person is sincerely interested in finding out more about God, like, I don't believe in God, but there's enough that makes me wonder, how can I know more? It's not like there's one person who lives up in a hideaway on a mountain who has an answer to that question. We have things like bookstores and Amazon and tons of websites with free material on them.
Yeah, and by the way, the person may come with questions, but probe for sincerity, because if it's something like they want you to interpret a specific Bible passage for them, watch out and don't even bite. I mean, if you're certain of your answer, fine, but the correct answer is almost always, you should talk to somebody educated about that part of the Bible and about the appropriate theology. I'm not, you know. You want to talk to my priest? I mean, I'm not a Bible scholar. Am I required to be? And you don't have to be that sarcastic. You can just tell I'm tired and I don't suffer fools easily. You can say this nicely, but a perfectly appropriate response is, I don't know. I'd have to ask my priest. It's usually not as simple as what it looks like. That's all the answer you're ever required to give.
Oh yeah, a tremendous number. I haven't had many approach me about Bible verses. A few times.
It's almost always a leading question too, and you can tell. You know.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is a lot of these people the few times this has happened, I should say. I'm just saying, in the majority of cases I can recall of this, of the few times it's happened, they've largely been from people who did a good job of convincing me that they're incompetent at reading. I mean, reading secular things.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there have been a few people I've just point blank refused, like, I'm not going to discuss biblical interpretation because you are incompetent at reading. If you show me some evidence you have paid, 6 months from now, show me some evidence you have paid somebody to teach you how to understand what you read in a secular sense, I'll consider talking with you about this. But as long as you're incompetent at reading even secular things, there is no way in the world I'm going to try to discuss the interpretation of what this passage means. And it's now of course,
in fact, it's a presumptuous burden, by the way, even to expect anybody to do that. I would expect, in fact, that if I walked up to a Bible scholar, one who'd spent his whole life on it, and said, what's this passage mean? And I want you to explain why it doesn't mean what I think it means. Yeah, I mean, you're not entitled. You don't just do that to people. The honest inquirer, you will know, is an honest inquirer.
Yeah, no, there's an asterisk here, and I'm Catholic, so I get to say this very easily. This is a problem inherent in the like in the fundamentalist approach to the Bible, where in the Bible, because fundies will, if not in these words, tell you that the Bible means whatever they think it means. And
and they've always got all the Bible verses memorized that they can just spit at you like on command. Yeah.
So those people, in a sense, do owe an answer because, of course, their entire worldview is based around the idea that they know the entirety of what's in the Bible. And moreover, that there is no difficulty whatever in understanding anything in it.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's the thing. Like, if your worldview is based around the concept that it is trivially easy to understand everything that's in the Bible as long as you're acting in good faith, then yeah, I mean, you kind of do owe people an answer. Well, even there, you don't owe people an answer. But in any event, it would be so trivially easy for you to give an answer.
Fundies are the ones who always fall for it when atheists do that. Explain this to me. And then they get into a verse-flinging war. And I just want to scream and run out of the room. And if you as a Catholic ever encountered that and didn't even know what to do and felt inferior somehow, no, the correct answer as a Catholic is to go, wow, they're spewing madness out of the Bible, both of them. I wish they'd go away. Because that's a better attitude, because people spouting madness out of the Bible is real easy to do. And this is not I don't think this is a Bible passage. Maybe it is, but the devil may cite scripture to his own purpose. It's a truism regardless.
Well, you can find the passages where the Bible didn't, the devil did in fact cite scripture. So
in fact, that's right. The devil did cite scripture too. And in the temptation of Job, I think. Maybe not, but definitely in the temptation of Christ.
Yeah, in the temptation of Christ, definitely.
Wouldn't God want you this? Wouldn't God want that?
Well, it was written something or other. Jump off an angel or something. It was written, not a hair on his head will be harmed.
Yeah.
And then Jesus replied, but it is further written.
And we should probably wrap up in the next 10-15 minutes, but if I'm timekeeping right, we'd like to keep it under an hour.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the security thing, because I just mentioned death threats, and I just mentioned that atheists are known to call people at work and do other things, or do other things to psych them out, like call and order you a pizza
Mm.
and pay for it. And then, like, just because they're playing games with you, 99.9% of these people are complete cowards who never leave their basements. um, and knowing that they are running a psychological racket, and that it's cheap and easy for them to do this, makes all the difference, right? Because then you do something like you calmly report that to the police, and then you kind of go online and say, "Oh, internet tough guy wants me." And then you let all your other fellow Christians know that this has happened, including everybody on YouTube or whatever social media on. "Oh, look, a creepy atheist is bothering me." That may sound like for harsh language, but that stuff happens. You also need to lock down all your accounts. You really do, with secure passwords and telephone verification, because they'll hijack your channel and hack your password if they can. It's happened to a number of people. They'll also file phony DMCA claims on you. Like basically claims of copyright strikes that are bogus. They'll do this to you too. One of the interesting ways of protecting yourself from all of that, though, I mean, we've all got to make these decisions, but we do need more voices on YouTube and elsewhere. We all got to make our own decisions for security. If you need to be anonymous, but in that case, guard that identity very strongly. Don't even tell your friends, kind of thing, right? Or, believe it or not, Christopher here has done this, what is sometimes the better thing. Here I am. This is my name. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me here. Here I am. I find in most cases, having that attitude just makes 98% of the internet tough guys disappear. Which is probably why you haven't gotten as much harassment as some of the other people I've talked to, Chris. You weren't hiding.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everybody needs to do that, because that's, no. But on the other hand, if you choose not to hide, and you realize it takes nothing for a teenager in Orlando, Florida to, call your employer in California and claim, I don't know, you're some kind of bigot who hates gays or something because you're a Christian. They do stuff like that, but then once you realize, yeah, it probably is, a psycho in Florida who's got nothing better to do but prowl the internet. I predict one of these things will happen to you at some point, Christopher. So, and
yeah, it's certainly possible.
So just be aware, if anybody listening, be aware these things are possible. Instead of being afraid, be strong in the Lord.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's in fact the approach I took of, on my channel description, I linked to, my website, which has my full name. And yeah, it's something I considered. And the nice thing about it is that once you make the decision to do it, you are just facing up to, it is possible something bad will happen. But it also makes it, I think, at least to me, it makes it, fairly, and I took, reasonable precautions of, I don't have my home address on my website, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but you're aware that if they want it bad enough, they'll look. That
yeah, I mean,
pay for credit searches and things like. They'll do that. They'll try and hit your credit record and stuff. I've talked to people they've done that to too. Just warning you, and they're crazy.
No, I mean,
and they have nothing better to do.
Yeah, no, it's all about I mean, those steps of protecting oneself are all about, raising the activation energy. Like, somebody's got to care at least more than this much in order to attack you. So at least it filters out the less motivated people.
But again, once you know all this is possible, but once you also realize it's important, because it is important, because if we're not out here doing this and being visibly Christian, we get to get more and more and more pushed down by the current culture. And unable to breathe freely, be who we are. There's people openly questioning our right to educate our children religiously now. Like, they want to make that illegal. And it's just, if you don't get your voices out there and say, we're not afraid of you, and we're not going away, and this is what we believe, and you don't have to, but we don't owe you anything because of what we believe, then the safer we'll all be.
Mm,
Because cringing forever, you know what cringing forever eventually will look like? China.
mm,
It really will. Um, Although there's good stories coming out of China for Christianity these days, and that's good. But
yeah. But
um,
that being said, yeah, no, to me, part of it is that it helps to clarify. It helps to clarify the question of, how much are you willing to risk?
um,
And
and in what direction? In what
yeah,
direction?
how much are you willing to risk, and in what direction? Um,
If not for yourself, for your children.
yeah,
This
and
is one of
just
the primary things driving me. I've got a 12-year-old who absolutely loves going to church, and loves God, and loves learning about God.
mm,
And what kind of world am I going to leave for him if I'm silent?
yeah, and also just for the truth,
For the truth, all by itself. Yeah.
to
I
be
mean,
willing
what?
simply to stand up and
Yeah,
proclaim the truth.
whatever it takes to get through to you, to motivate you. If it's not even if you, I mean, the truth of God is the most important thing here. But I mean, whatever it takes to get you emotionally activated, think about the kids. Think about your parents. Think about your community. Think about the direction things are headed in, and what it looks like if Christians stay silent
Yeah,
because they're afraid. Then fear generates fear, and silence generates silence, and that's not good.
no, it really isn't. And I mean, and it is also the case that a lot of people have things to offer, which I think a lot of people don't realize. Um, that you don't have to be a specialist in order to have a reason to actually have a presence.
No, you really
And
do not.
yeah, I mean, this also I think becomes especially clear if you look at some. I mean, some of the atheist YouTube channels are so astonishingly bad. So I mean, some of them. Now, to clarify, there are channels run by atheists that are quite good, especially ones in which they don't, that aren't related to religion. Like, there's some, historical channels where they don't talk about religion at all. They mention, you can kind of find out if you look hard enough,
Hmm.
that they're an atheist.
Oh, by the
But it
way,
never comes up. So, those are good.
hmm I shouldn't have interrupted you. But send me some atheist internet channels that do history, if you know of some, because again, I just did this devastating interview with a historian who goes after atheists and their history,
Mm,
and I want to send it to some of those atheist historians.
mm.
But that's
Yeah,
the
but
kind of
I'm talking about like people who are interested in specific aspects, like in what manner did the Romans organize their legions?
right,
Like
right.
historical stuff like that, where it has nothing to do with religion of any kind, whatever. They're talking about things like, what was the manner in which orders were given without, and how did they order, and how did they march, and what sort of weapons and armor did
Without
they use?
arguing, I think even some of that history is tainted when they pull religion out of the equation. That's worth another conversation. We should have a conversation sometime about pagan Roman religion. I've
Mm,
learned some things about it that's just fascinating. But I mean, just for example, in one of the primary source biographers of Julius Caesar also attributed miracles to him, and nobody thought that odd at the time. But in any case, we
So,
should
so I just wanted
start
to
wrapping
clarify
up.
that I don't mean somebody who is an atheist, but who is talking about a specific subject.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm not talking about them, but if you
Because
look at some of the, just some of the atheist channels I've run across, they're so. I mean, just to be really blunt about it, they're so dumb. I mean, so very,
oh, they
very
are.
dumb.
They're dumb
Um,
and they're shallow. And by the way, it shouldn't be wrong for you to call them dumb and shallow. You think that's being unkind? I think it's unkind to let stupid people know they're still being stupid, that they're being stupid, and just let them be stupid. Especially, we're in a cultural milieu, especially in a lot of socioeconomic circles, i.e., lower, what we would call people on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. They do swear, they do tend to be rude, and they do tend to not respect you if you don't immediately show backbone back. Like if
mm,
they bark and you don't bark back, they will never respect you, kind of thing.
mm,
That's not to say you as a Christian need to go in and go after those people, but again, realize this is part of the Wild West cultural milieu that is the internet in 2017. And just be, instead of being afraid of it, just be aware, oh, it's there.
yeah.
Um,
And
and
moreover,
secure yourself and secure your accounts. But
well, I think too, we also, something that I think is needed is people from that background who,
yes,
and especially, being Catholic, I get to say this, especially Catholic people from that background. Um,
from a
you know,
rough and tumble world, yeah,
exactly, that we need more people like that because of course, people engage best by and large with people who are at least somewhat like themselves. Not
hmm,
entirely, we don't all do best with clones of ourselves, obviously.
that's right.
Um, but
And if you're
people.
upper middle class and you have a certain genteel sensibility, um, you'll think some of these people are psychotic, and it's like, no, this is what that slice of culture looks like in many cases.
Yeah, I mean, there's an interesting sort of baseline that's achieved. When like in that style where one person is just bluntly aggressive and the other person meets it with the same amount of sort of blunt aggression. That and it's something I've observed, though I myself, I come from a different background. I don't really take part in that. Um, but something I've observed, just walking around in everyday life too, and in some circumstances I've been in, that like that level of blunt aggression looks really, really weird if you're not used to it, but it works for the people involved, and it
Think
is not.
think what it looked like in the Wild West for real, which was rough and tumble nasty. Think what it looks like in an inner city. Think what it looks like even in a shabby suburb where there's guns and meth around. That's
Yeah.
part of the culture now, and you'll encounter it online. And being and just realizing not every Christian's obligated to go and meet that culture head on. I'm just saying it's there. You encounter it. Don't let it freak you out.
And
Um,
ideally, if we could get Christians from those cultures to.
that's exactly correct. And I'll tell you a story that I know some of my our fellow Catholic and Christian YouTubers don't like the Escaping Atheism project specifically because we are rude. And we use caustic and coarse vulgar language, and we do it pretty inhesitantly. Many have said, well, that makes you look juvenile, and I'm like, yeah. And other things, it makes us look other things as well. But this is an important story. I told it to you many times, but I want other Christians to hear it, especially the more genteel-oriented ones. I went to an all-boys school in the early 1980s on the very rough, nasty part of the south side of Chicago. And that all-boys school was run by Augustinian monks. It was attached to a monastery. The monastery was right across the street, as I recall. Um, the principal was a consecrated Augustinian monk. Half the instructors were. The principal was also my homeroom teacher because he did double duty as the principal and the a teacher with a class load. He had a PhD in, I think it was Greek history and ancient history. He had studied in Greece. He was fluent in multiple languages. He chose a life of poverty teaching in a Catholic high school, pretty rough part of the city of the south side of Chicago to do with all that. And on home, you can bleep this out afterwards if you want. We'll put this is the bleeping session. I recall meeting him on homeroom the first day. We all introduces himself. I don't even remember what he's talking about, but this was the first time I heard an adult swear in public. I do recall I see, well, wouldn't that be a bunch of bullshit? And like, this whole room full of boys froze but was in love. And the words fuck and shit came out of his mouth, and then eventually came a lecture as when is swearing okay and when is it not? Well, here's what a word like fuck means and what it looks like, and even gave us a description of what the sex act is like. Oh, by the way, he was a priest too. We were talking about penises and vaginas at one point in history class when we were talking about swearing. And, what he had done is make a bunch of rough working class boys respect him and realize that he was real, because this was the kind of language they heard at home and with their friends. And it was almost at that time a way, I think, of welcoming us as freshmen into the world of men, into the rough world of men, which is a different cultural milieu, I think, from what most people have. But depending on your context, you know, half your listeners even either just went blanched, and others went, well, yeah, that's just reality. And that's reality in a lot of places. Old school Catholics from Boston, old school Catholics from Chicago, old school Catholics from, you know, Hispanic neighborhoods, Polish neighborhoods. Oh my God, Polish Catholics swear like, oh my God, they swear. They swear so much. Like, fuck you, fuck, what's that bullshit? Get out of here. You know, this is part of Catholic culture in large parts of the world, and we don't all have to adopt the genteel sensibility that doesn't like that. You also don't have to embrace it, you know. But it's not inherently sinful to use Germanic words instead of Latin words. The word cunt is not necessarily any worse than the word vagina. We just think the Latin is more polite. Well, certain parts of the country, they don't like that. And they don't even trust you if you won't use that kind of language. They think you're a pussy.
Yeah.
So it's all about what audience are you talking to and who are you trying to get through to? And I'll stop swearing now.
Yeah, no, it's very true that the nature of rough language, the nature of that sort of thing, and this actually really gets to something you see a lot, at least I've seen a lot, of the the Christians who think that the only viable approach with people is to be nice. And which itself, niceness is a very interesting topic, because niceness is not actually a virtue. It can be nice, but it's not a virtue in itself. It's something that, in fact, niceness can often be cowardice. It can often be a way of just attempting to not face up to unpleasant things. And like when it came to there's someone who pointed out in good faith, not criticizing the gentleman, but who pointed out when one time when I quoted, don't cast your pearls before swine, don't give dogs what is holy. You see, you did kind of just call these people, swine and dogs.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I did. Yeah, no, that was not accidental. These were atheists who were trying to lecture me on my Christian duty.
That's right. And I will swear one more time and use another vulgarity. In certain cultures, the word asshole will functionally mean much the same thing. But anyway.
Yeah. And here's the thing, it's a funny thing. I mean, I always love the, that motivational poster that says, if somebody asks you, what would Jesus do? Remind them that, chasing people with whips and throwing tables, overturning tables is within the realm of possibility. And it's a painting of the cleansing of the temple, where Jesus took his belt and fashioned it into a whip and threw tables over and chased the moneylenders out of the temple.
Yeah. It's not that we need to take over the internet, but we need to get some balls.
Yeah, well, and when you look at it, like, yes, and again, here comes the distinction between judging people and judging actions, that a person who is a public blasphemer is publicly blaspheming, and it's well within our competence to judge that.
Now, and even to say I am offended by it, but yeah.
Yeah, well, is the man culpable for it is a very different question, and that one is outside of my responsibility. That's not, is the man culpable for being a public blasphemer? I don't know. I can't know, and fortunately, I don't have to know. It's not relevant to my life.
We need to start rapping.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. But on the other hand, and that is kind of the thing that if the man says blaspheme publicly, he is in fact a public blasphemer. And so, he is in fact acting like swine. And, I know that from his perspective, he's not, but well, so what? I mean, well, what the hell is that to me? In almost an extremely literal sense. I mean, that a man thinks that he is doing well by doing something that is bad doesn't mean that it's not bad. And so, it's something, and I'm not doing this in like the proof texting sort of sense, because you can find this sort of thing throughout the Bible where, this came up in some conversation I remember, but the part where Jesus admonished people to, first, if your brother's doing something wrong, take him aside and speak to him privately. And if he changes his ways, you've regained a brother. But, if he still refuses to amend, then denounce him publicly and treat him as you would a sinner or a tax collector. That is not,
That's pretty damn blunt.
It is, for one thing. And it's something you find, in a lot of places. You find this general theme that, within the context of people who are trying to do well, to give them the benefit of the doubt and so on. But within the context of people who are not trying to do well, like the pagans who were not Jews and were not respectful of God, that you find, we were not told to not give to our pearls to swine, to not, give to dogs what is holy, but also told, but under no circumstances figure out who, what that means. Don't figure out how you could possibly apply this, because that would mean you're calling somebody swine. Well,
how about we end on this, Tim? How about we end on this? I have or do you have one more thing to say?
Just a super brief thing to finish out that point. That there's some version of Christianity wherein niceness is placed as the primary, which obviously is not an imitation of Jesus, because Jesus was many things, but not nice. I defy you to find anywhere in the Bible in which Jesus was nice. He was loving, but he was not nice. And that's not to say that we should, Jesus had some advantages we don't, to be sure, in terms of things like, perfect wisdom. But that being said, the one time Jesus called the people hypocrites, as opposed to, like scribes and Pharisees and so on, was about not using the wits that God had given them. It's a great passage about, you see the signs of the weather, and you know what the weather is going to be, but you can't read the signs of the times, you hypocrites. And we were given reason for a reason, and we're supposed to actually use it. And when you have things like inescapable conclusions, like that somebody who is trying to encourage other people to believe that God does not exist, yes, he is swine.
And I'll give you this. Let's close on this. I'll call this the Ask Your Priest Challenge. Don't argue with anybody with a Bible on the internet. Go ask your priest this. I dare you. What does turn the other cheek actually mean? It does not mean just sit there and take a blow. Actually, if you learn the whole history of it, it's literally masters would slap their slaves using, I believe it was only the left hand. And if you turned the cheek a certain way, you were actually turning to face them, and they couldn't slap you in the customary way. You were standing towards them as an equal. Ask your priest if you don't believe me. Don't believe anybody with a Bible. Just go ask your priest, please. I just said it right.
That's a great thing. Being in the Catholic context, I can say that the Bible was not, books don't read themselves to you. You have to read them. You have to understand them. And
that's right.
And this is why it's a whole other topic about fundamentalists and their sins.
Let's do it again. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, but yes, if you want to interpret the Bible, the first and most important question should be, how much time do you have? Because you're going to need a lot of it.
There you go. And if anybody out there is not afraid of rough and tumble language and throwing elbows, please join us on Escaping Atheism. We could use your support. We really could.
Yeah, and we need more people who are willing to. We really do.
Just be out there and part of this whole milieu.
So, all right.
God bless. Ave Maria.
Yep. And for anyone listening, until next time, may you hit everything you aim at.
Ave Maria.
Welcome to Missing the Mark, where we look for meaning in strange places. I'm Christopher. Welcome. Today I'm talking with Max Kolbe of the Escaping Atheism project, and we're going to be talking about personal, at least the beginning topic will be personal interactions with atheists, specifically the angry sort one meets in comment sections on Twitter and so on. People who, make you think that maybe they're typing with snake fangs at the end of their fingers.
In your YouTube comments, they're all over Facebook now too.
Yeah, I don't hang out on Facebook much, but I am very, very, very willing to believe that one.
Yep.
So, welcome, Max.
Hey, nice to meet everybody here. I'm sure a lot of your subscribers already know me. Some may not, and that's fine. We're the Escaping Atheism project. Just to pimp us a little, you can find us Escaping Atheism. You find us on Twitter. There's actually a group of 7 of us officially that are doing the Escaping Atheism project. And we're not doing Christian apologetics on Escaping Atheism, even though most of us are Christian. We aren't all. So
You have a
that's
neo-pagan, right?
Yes, we do. Pretty serious one. I haven't had the conversation with him yet on why the neo-paganism, but he's very serious about it, so that's fine. And we have a lot of friends who are philosophical theists who are not Christian. And Christians are, of course, very welcome. The only thing I would warn, we swear and we're mean to people. So if that sort of behavior disturbs you, don't come. But if you're not afraid of that, then, we engage in the kind of rough and tumble of what we would call the vulgar culture. And we engage the vulgar culture using language it understands. That's not necessarily everybody's style, though, and everybody doesn't need to adopt that, because it can get negative, and that's not for everybody.
Yeah, no, it's something I've noticed, and we'll probably talk about else at some other time about how different people genuinely understand things in different ways, and especially how there are people who don't really understand other things besides very rough approaches. But then there also seems to be the but we want to talk more about the sort of atheist who is very rough and tumble, but it also doesn't seem to be all that sincere, or if they're sincere, the only thing they're sincere about is their deep-seated generalized anger.
Well, here's what's going on. I think we very badly need more Christians, and I'll even say other religions too, but this is a Christian channel. Christians need to get out there in the public arena. There's even, especially for Catholics, you've probably heard the phrase "evangelize the culture" before and wondered what it meant. And Bishop Barron, Richard Robert Barron, and others have admitted to some confusion on their own, but the consensus view of those who thought it through is the way you evangelize the culture is you be visibly Christian while being in the culture. That and be seen as a force, mostly for good, but and it doesn't mean you would never do. I don't think you should ever do what so many of the evangelicals do, which is, have you accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and personal Savior? Have you thought about going to hell and how to avoid it? All that blackmail stuff that really off-putting to people.
And for good reason.
Yeah, it is for good reason, actually.
I mean, for those who don't know, Max and I go back quite a long time. For those who don't know, you yourself were actually put off by that very thing for quite some time.
Yeah, I am an ex-atheist, and I had a long journey home. But I did start in Protestant / evangelical land, and one of the things that drove me out of Christianity and out of religion was what I would call the hardcore believer burn people that just want you to accept the proposition that you just must believe this or you're going to burn. It's like accept an intellectual proposition and don't doubt it or you're going to be punished forever. Yeah, I mean, I ran screaming away from that, and I never went back. Well, I'm Catholic now.
Yeah.
But and why were we talking about that?
Precisely because that sort of bullying approach doesn't work, and that's what it fundamentally is bullying. It's related actually to why I don't debate people, because debating people is attempting to get them to change their position. And since people, it's something I mentioned in a video I just made, posted last night actually, but since people believe the things they believe for large masses of evidence gained through living moment to moment and taking all those moments in and considering them not in a formal sense, but but in informal sense, not irrationally because it's not formal, but simply not not in the sense of like thinking about each one with your internal monologue, but all the moments of life taken together lead people to different conclusions, whereas arguments are brief summaries. And so if you're trying to shift somebody's position that has been they've arrived at over the course of hundreds of thousands of moments, the mass of hundreds of thousands of moments put together by a few words,